Part 31. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 301. On top of this dark mire, when Wu Yu transformed from an immortal ape back into human form and looked around, he saw that all the demons had fled, plunged into the mire, disappeared and hid like a bereaved dog. Only the golden and stone monkey, who was dying, was suppressed by the Zhifang demonic suppression pillar. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow Diamond Suit. At this time, Wu Yu's upper body clothes were torn, and a golden swastika was shining brightly on his back. Wu Yu turned his back to the gold and stone monkey. At this time, he turned around and saw that the gold and stone monkey's eyes were dull. He was afraid that he still couldn't come back to his senses. Go away! Wu Yu put away the 9 square demon suppressing pillar. As the 9 golden coiled dragon pillars were retreating, it was like the 9 divine dragons merged together, gradually shrank, and finally landed in Wu Yu's palm. Like a pen, was put into the sumuru bag by Wu Yu. The golden stone monkey quickly put away his arms and put them back on his body. Otherwise, it would take a long time to grow his arms and match them with his body. After finishing it, his eyes were gloomy and embarrassed, and he said, "Wu Yu, I fell into your trap today, and I lost my care to you, but there is still a long time to come, we will see." Wu Yu glanced at him and said, "I have no interest at all. Remember that I am the only one who has lost. If we meet next time, you are not even qualified to be my opponent. Haha, if you win a little, you won't be ashamed to say it, and you won't get far." After the golden stone monkey finished speaking, he watched Wu Yu retreat with cold eyes, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The golden stone spirit monkey was still shameless and left immediately. If he found another demon with a relationship with him and a deeper cultivation level, then Wu Yu would really have nothing to do. Just after the golden stone monkey left, Wu Yu noticed some movement behind him. It turned out that not far away, a group of middle-aged demons rose out of the mud and were suspended in the air. They were all wearing dark and wide clothes. The robe seems to be integrated with the entire swamp. At first glance, it looks like a more powerful demon. Its aura is huge and its cultivation is deep, surpassing that of the golden and stone monkey. They are the law enforcers of hunting ground number 6. They rarely appear. Wu Yu doesn't even know what their identity is. When they appeared, Wu Yu, without saying a word, first listed the 51 demon bands he had obtained, and said loudly, "Everyone, I have obtained enough demon bands. According to the rules of the Supreme Hunting Ground, I should be allowed to leave here." Place, right. The other party was silent for a while. In fact, they were nearby, paying attention to the whole battle, and knew how Wu Yu reversed the situation and won. Among them, one was obviously the leader. He looked slightly older. A demon with a white beard could still be vaguely seen in the black robe. He said in a hoarse and low voice, "You are right." When he said this, Wu Yu felt more at ease. He put away the demonic prohibition and said, "My friend Zhuiying is still at the number 2 hunting ground. I want to see him before leaving. Please help me to send me to the number 2 hunting ground." The leader answered decisively this time, "You are lucky to have completed your mission before we were sent to the number 7 hunting ground. However, we are only responsible for sending you out of the Supreme Hunting Ground. You have no right to go to the number 2 hunting ground." In other words, Wu Yu originally wanted to say goodbye to him, but these demons did not agree, and there was never such a rule. After all, they still regarded Wu Yu as their prey. Wu Yu persisted a few times, but to no avail. In desperation, he could only say, "Can you guys take me to hunting ground number 1? I made an agreement with Zhang Ziyu from hunting ground number 1. All you need to do is bring me to hunting ground no 1. I took it to hunting ground number 1, Zhang Ziyu can also let me leave the Supreme Hunting Ground." As far as Wu Yu knows, every level of hunting ground has a way to leave. Unexpectedly, the other party still shook his head decisively and said, We are only responsible for sending you out of the supreme hunting ground. The rest is your own business and we don't care. For them, even this matter is not negotiable at all. It was already a great gift that they could let Wu Yu leave. Follow me. The leader left immediately, and the other law enforcers dispersed to hunting cabinet number 6. Because the other party left quickly, Wu Yu had no room for negotiation and could only follow him quickly. As the saying goes, people under the eaves have to bow their heads. The opponent is at least a cultivator from the Kanghai realm of Zifu who is equivalent to the Earth Sword level. In terms of strength, Wu Yu is absolutely unable to compete with him. Hunting ground number 6 is like a maze. Wu Yu has stayed here for more than a year and has never found a mountain here. But after running around with the law enforcer for a few times, the mountain appeared. This dark peak was built on a swamp. There were 9 gates leading to other hunting grounds below. But on the peak, there was a simple wooden gate. The law enforcer opened the wooden gate with a silent expression and said, "Get out of here, you will leave the supreme hunting ground, and your life and death will have nothing to do with the supreme hunting ground." The other person's expression was cold, with no interest in talking to Wu Yu at all. He was as cold as iron. In this situation, Wu Yu could not stand still. He quickened his pace and stepped directly into the wooden door regardless of what happened. The next one in an instant, the wooden door slammed shut. Click. Wu Yu was suddenly pushed out by a huge force and charged forward. At this moment, he even wondered if he had been released from the supreme hunting ground. As soon as such an impact occurred, he hit a circle of light in front of him. He felt as if he had traveled through a world. Suddenly, his body became much more relaxed. He landed on a flat ground, where he had been in the mire all year round. This was the first time a feeling of being down to earth for once. He instantly looked around and saw that he was in an ancient forest, surrounded by ancient trees. It was slightly similar to hunting ground number 1, but there were obviously no world barriers around it, and there was an obvious endless demon in the sky. The sea is endless, rolling violently, with vast evil and bloody aura, and the whole world is dark. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Obviously, this was not the supreme hunting ground. It took him almost 2 years to finally come out of it. Wu Yu looked around vigilantly and found that there was no danger for the time being, and there were no living creatures within a very distant range. Of course, there is no entrance or exit to the supreme hunting ground. He came out of the wooden door and appeared in this place out of thin air. In the endless forest, the rolling endless sea of ink, and the endless distance in sight, Wu Yu stood on a thick branch and began to think about what to do next. Anyway, Zhang Ziyu will definitely know that I was sent out of the supreme hunting ground. If he still keeps his promise and wants this face, he will come to me. Without him, I would be the only human being in this endless sea of demons. I don't know which direction to take. Not to mention, there are many monsters along the road who dominate the mountain and become kings. The strongest among them can eat me casually. How can they ask me where I come from? Thinking of this, Wu Yu finally decided to wait here first. However, he has an illusion. He feels that this endless sea of demons is even more dangerous to him than the Supreme Hunter. It is full of dangers and there are various demons that may destroy him at any time and may not care about Zhuiying. There are even some demons who don't even know who the newly born 9 infants are. Therefore, we have to wait until Zhang Ziyu. However, he couldn't wait arrogantly. Wu Yu hid himself first, entered a dormant state, and examined this world of demons. He is very calm. But as time passed, he returned home as fast as he could, and he became more and more obsessed with the Xuanhuan Immortal sect, especially the people there. With my current strength, as long as I master the magical power of the Great Dao, I will be a Huangjian level disciple. However, ordinary Suanjian level disciples are no match for me. In another year or two, I can surpass Bailey Fi Hung. Ming Long said that the great sage Qishan's magical power is truly terrifying. It is much more powerful than the hell of gold and stone. As long as I leave the endless demon sea safely, I will return to Xuanhuan to practice the magical power. Of course, if you think so, whether Ming Long will give it to you is another matter. When Wu Yu's patience gradually wore out, about 10 days later, Wu Yu finally discovered that someone had entered the forest. It turned out to be a moon-chasing dog. The moon-chasing dog was looking around. When he discovered Wu Yu, he turned into the human form is none other than Zhang Ziyu with a cold expression. Well, Wu Yu, I didn't expect it, you have finished it. However, this does not count how powerful you are, it can only be regarded as the few people at hunting ground number 6 who are not strict enough. If it were me, I would have sent you there a long time ago. Hunting ground number 7 is fair, Zhang Ziyu said with some dissatisfaction. Anyway, I'm here. As long as you keep your promise, I'm very grateful to you, Wu Yu said. Don't worry, Zhang Ziyu, keep my word. I can't fail to do what I said in front of so many people. Let's go. He didn't bother to say more, and turned into a moon-chasing dog again, regardless of Wu Yu's speed. How about taking Wu Yu directly and running between the ancient trees in the sky? Wu Yu didn't expect it to go so smoothly. He thought Zhang Ziyu wouldn't show up. Even if he did, he wouldn't be so cheerful and would even embarrass himself. But the speed of the moon chaser dog is indeed very fast. Wu Yu needs to exert his physical strength to the extreme and borrow strength from the ground to catch up with him. However, it only takes half a day for Wu Yu to be unable to bear it anymore, but Zhang Ziyu basically can't. Concern and just rushing on his way can be regarded as a disincentive to Wu Yu. However, Wu Yu gritted his teeth and followed him. A few days passed in the blink of an eye, and the two of them didn't communicate at all. Zhang Ziyu didn't even bother to look back at him. How long do you think it will take for me to leave Yunmen at this speed? Wu Yu asked. How did I know? You just followed me. Why are you talking so much? Zhang Ziyu rolled his eyes. Are there other demonic forces along the way? Wu Yu learned that the demons were actually divided among the kings. The infant emperor was only the largest master of this endless demon sea, but there were other masters here, even those who did not obey the infant emperor's discipline. The most famous one is the Candle Emperor, who secretly opposes the infant emperor. It is said that the Candle Emperor is a candle dragon. The candle dragon is different from the dragon. It is already a real dragon, but its nature is slightly sinister and evil, so it is not recognized by the real dragon and is kicked out of the ranks of immortal beasts. But after all, it is a real dragon, so its talents and abilities are top-notch. In the entire divine continent, it is only second to the infant emperor and is the second demon in the divine continent. I owe you all 5 updates. Mobile phone users. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 302. Hunting Ground Number 2. In a dark wilderness where one cannot see his fingers, Zhu Ying is moving deep underground. Based on Zhu Ying's habits, he really likes dark environments. In such an environment, he progresses more rapidly. Zhu Ying was shocked at first when he learned about the major events that happened at the number 6 hunting ground, where Wu Yu finally defeated the Golden Stone Monkey and left the supreme hunting ground. After reacting, he smiled and said to himself, this is what he did. The Golden Stone Monkey also wanted to kill Wu Yu, I remember it. In the dark night, Zhu Ying's huge body crawled deep underground. Occasionally he raised his head and looked at the sky. Under his solemn eyes, any cultivator who accidentally broke into this place would leave immediately. In fact, many prey have challenged Zhu Ying. They soon discovered that although Zhu Ying was rumored to be cowardly, that was his character. In terms of strength and talent, he was unparalleled in the entire endless demon sea. It is said that with his strength, it would be easy to penetrate the supreme hunting ground. The last meeting didn't work out, and we didn't get the chance to discuss things, but there will always be opportunities in the future. When you return to Xuanhuan, you will definitely make rapid progress, and I will also find a way to leave the supreme hunting ground. In 1 year, 2 years, or several years, when we meet again, we will see who makes greater progress. Over the years, Wu Yu was the only person who made Zhu feel sympathetic in terms of talent and qualifications. It even made Zhu feel the pressure. In a while, we, the 9-infant clan, will be in the period of rapid growth. Let's see if Wu Yu can catch up with me. Enter the subtitle URL. Father said that our 9-infants clan is the #1 demon in the divine continent, with unparalleled bloodline. Among all the demons in the world, there really is no one who surpasses me in terms of qualifications and bloodline. With such bloodline, I definitely cannot waste it. The 9 heads of Zhu stood up and looked straight into the distance. One of the heads in the center murmured to himself, "Let's meet again someday and let's discuss. Wu Yu, don't let me down." He never had a target to compete with. And this time, he found it. The sky is a rolling endless sea of demons. It is a real ocean lying across the sky. This endless area is always dark, so it breeds evil spirits, miasma, bloody air, and sinister air. Under the constant influence, evil spirits become evil. Hung Sheng. Under such an endless sea of demons, Wu Yu was a little dizzy. This was a paradise for demons. Here, even his elixirs would be suppressed, and even his physical body would decay and corrode under such gloomy conditions all year round. No wonder the human race is so powerful but cannot eradicate the demons. As long as you come to this endless demonic sea, under the rolling miasma, you will feel like a mortal who reaches the ocean and will capsize and die at any time. Wu Yu, surrounded by countless monsters, forced himself to follow Zhangzuyu as fast as he could. Zhangzuyu barely said a few words to him along the way, and he didn't answer Wu Yu's questions. Occasionally when Wu Yu makes a big move, he will scold him, "If you make such a big noise, you will attract a monster more terrifying than me. I won't be able to protect you by then. You asked for it? If you were killed, I would be completely benevolent and righteous." This moon-chasing dog had no patience with him. Although Wu Yu was unhappy with him, he still needed this demon to clear the way, so he kept his mouth shut. As time passed, I felt a demon approaching several times, which was thrilling. Even the majestic demonic aura once made Wu Yu's hair stand on end when he passed by. He was like a sheep that strayed into a pack of wolves. There were bloody mouths everywhere, and it could happen at any time. Eat this alien race alive. Heading south, while constantly taking detours, bypassing the territory of powerful demons and choosing the safest path, Wu Yu could clearly feel that the thickness of the miasma in the sky was weakening, which was a good sign. However, in this world where demons are rampant, Wu Yu is still very cautious and does not relax at all. In fact, he encounters some wandering little demons on the road, including some with several levels of demon elixirs. He was very excited when he saw Wu Yu. If Zhangzuyu hadn't stopped him, they would have eaten Wu Yu alive. In the endless sea of demons, there are almost all kinds of demons. Wu Yu has seen thousands of demons along the way, and few of them are the same. In addition to animals and birds that are most likely to become demons, fish and shrimps in lakes and rivers, poisonous insects in forest ditches, even ancient trees, and some filthy things that have accumulated over the years can all become demons. When anything gets old, it is possible to become a monster. Those who can become monsters are definitely not just animals and birds. In this endless sea of demons, there is no night at all. It is always night. Wu Yu followed Zhangzuyu, running among the undulating mountains, hiding among the dark trees of the mountains. Wu Yu rarely made any movement, but Zhangzuyu did not accommodate him, so for so many days, Wu Yu he was traveling at the extreme limit. If his alchemy hadn't recovered quickly, he would have died of exhaustion on the road. It's good to leave the endless demon sea if you have the chance. Do you still want us to take you out in a sedan chair, Seeing Wu Yu tired, Zhang Ziyu sneered. Wu Yu was too lazy to talk to him. At this moment, Zhang Ziyu looked solemn, looking at the large area of billowing red clouds in the sky in front of him, his expression slightly changed. In fact, the endless demonic sea is originally black, but the large area in front seems to be dyed red with blood. Under the blood-like clouds, it is filled with thick blood energy. Looking vaguely, there seems to be a blood-colored lake over there. It was full of blood. It was the steaming of so much blood that dyed the clouds in the sky red. The front is the territory of the red blood demon. The red blood demon is the famous demon of our demon clan. No weaker than your Tianjian level disciples. Thousands of people have been slaughtered under his hands. We have to bypass this blood demon. Don't make any sound. If you are discovered, don't blame me, Zhang Ziyu snorted coldly. Red-blooded demon, Wu Yu looked over there. Such a sinister aura was spreading everywhere. Above the blood sea, blood mist rose, as if there were countless dead souls howling miserably on it, which was horrifying. Such monsters must be avoided. Since the red blood demon is so scary, why not go further away, Wu Yu asked. Nonsense, after you go far away, there will be stronger demons, even more terrifying, and you can't bear it. Don't worry, as long as you bypass the sea of blood and go forward, you will basically be safe. You can leave Yunmen safely. There's no problem, Zhang Ziyu said coldly. Indeed, without him leading the way, he would have entered the territory of other demons long ago. These demons who dominate the mountain will not care that he came out of the supreme hunting ground and obtained 50 demon bands. Walk. Zhang Ziyu didn't say much, and turned into a moon-chasing dog and ran ahead, heading for a path that bypassed the sea of blood, but did not isolate it too far. Wu Yu followed closely, looking at the blood unconsciously. In the sea, I can still vaguely hear the chattering of the dead souls over there, and the smell blown by the wind is Wu Yu's rich smell of blood. The red-blooded demon is rumored to be the blood of an ancient cultivator. Over the years, it breeds resentment. The resentment opens up spiritual intelligence and eventually becomes a demon. This type of demon is the most special among our demon clan, but it is also the most terrifying, Moon Dog said with lingering fear. It turned out to be a dirty blood demon. The world is so vast and full of wonders. After saying that, the moon chaser hurried on. Wu Yu was still in a state of nervousness. When he was halfway through the detour, he keenly felt something was wrong, as if something was staring at him and catching up with him. Then the feeling of countless eyes behind him immediately made his hair stand on end. As he was on his way, he suddenly stopped and turned around. Sure enough, deep in the forest behind him, there were bursts of blood that began to spread towards the side. You. The moon chaser dog noticed that he was not leaving midway, and turned around to curse. When he saw the blood mist penetrating the forest behind Wu Yu, Zhang Ziyu was immediately horrified, and even the dark wolf's head felt pale. He broke out in cold sweat, and with a swish sound, he bent down his front legs, knelt on the ground, and said with a trembling voice, "Greetings to the great red-blooded demon." The little demon moon-chasing dog, under the orders of the emperors, serves as a law enforcer for the supreme hunting ground. I have official business today, so I wanted to bypass the sea of blood, but I didn't expect that I still disturbed the big demon, and the little demon deserves death. Judging from Moon Chaser Dog's horrifying attitude, it was obvious that he was not joking. Wu Yu knew that he was in trouble. In the blink of an eye, the thick blood mist filled the air, forming a circle of rising blood energy, surrounding Wu Yu and the Moon Chaser Dog. The surrounding blood mist became heavier and heavier. In the blink of an eye, within the field of vision, the world is already full of blood, especially around it. A circle of blood mist condenses into blood waves, constantly spinning and flying around. The aura of sinisterness and blood is really thrilling. Why, is there someone? In the trance, a mysterious female voice came from the blood mist. She seemed a little confused, so her voice was trembling. But the more this happened, the weirder the red blood demon became, and the harder it was to deal with it. Hearing this, the moon chaser dog quickly said, "This person is a friend of Zhu Ying, the son of the Ying Emperor. He was mistakenly taken to the supreme hunting ground by the big demon Ba Snake. The little demon listened to Zhu Ying's instructions and sent this human race out of Yunmen. The son of the infant emperor? It's just the rumor, that little baby who doesn't want to kill anyone." The voice came slowly. At this moment, the blood mist filled the air, and the blood waves gathered in front of Wu Yu's eyes, and finally condensed into a bloody man. The bloody man was composed of flowing blood, and then slowly changed, and actually gave birth to flesh and blood, and in front of Wu Yu's eyes, a bloody man appeared. A little bit of blood transformed into a human form, and she turned out to be a beautiful, clean girl. She looked stunning in the world at first glance, but her eyes were pure blood, without even the whites of her eyes, so it was a bit scary. She stared at Wu Yu with her eyes, suddenly smiled, and said, "That little baby is really good at choosing friends. This human race is a delicious food." 1 chapter today, 6 more chapters due. Updates are expected to start on Friday. I wish you success on Wednesday and Thursday. If successful, I will celebrate more. /U003 sem /U003e /U003 sem /U003 follow the official QQ public account, ID, love, read it early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003c/m /U003e /U003c/m /U003e. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 303. When the red blood demon approached, Wu Yu seemed to be sinking into a bottomless sea of blood, feeling like he was drowning. The heavy smell of blood seeped into every pore of his body, matching Wu Yu's own blood, water, and fire. The lack of tolerance made Wu Yu extremely uncomfortable. Of course, the most terrifying thing is the threat of the red blood demon. This demon transformed from dirty blood does indeed look like a pure and beautiful girl. The blood waves on her body condensed into a blood-colored dress, which swung around her delicate body like a river. Her eyes filled with blood looked horrifying and lifeless. Every move makes people feel suffocated. After the pill is shattered, the demon can also become the purple mansion Kanghai. From then on, the details of cultivation are almost exactly the same as those of humans. The red-blooded demon in front of me is probably as good as Zifu Kanghai, or even close to the level of Shenzhenjiao. Wu Yu knew very well that such an old monster could easily control his own life and death. Facing this kind of existence, there is no hope of resistance. He can only wait and see what the red blood demon wants to do after intercepting him. In all worlds, the weak eat the strong. If you fall here today, it will be your destiny. You can't blame others. Fortunately, the red blood demon didn't seem to be in a hurry to take Wu Yu's life. She surrounded Wu Yu, thoughtfully, and then clicked her tongue in surprise and said, "I heard about your deeds at the Supreme Hunting Ground. It's just a golden elixir. You are at the 5th level of the Great Dao realm, but you have such a body. Even we are envious of you. You kid will definitely be the enemy of my demon clan in the future. Today you accidentally entered my territory. You must give me someone who will not drink your blood. Reason." As she spoke, she licked her bright red lips with her tongue, her eyes shining with greed. In fact, when Wu Yu heard this question, he knew that his life was not in danger today. If she really wanted to do this, I'm afraid she wouldn't talk nonsense with her. In fact, thinking about it, if she died here, Zhu Ying could always find out. Wu Yu said without thinking, "You are wrong." Like Zhu Ying, We both believe that humans and monsters have their own good and evil, but the historical hatred is too heavy. Zhuiying will not be an enemy of people, and neither will I enemies with demons. Giggle, the red-blooded demon chuckled. At such a young age, you just made some innocent remarks in the club, and who of the two tribes don't know your little truth? However, the reality is that the hatred between the two tribes has long exceeded your imagination, and it has exceeded your control, Qi blood demon said dismissively. Wu Yu said seriously, because of this, we don't ask others to join me. I just take care of myself and proceed from my own heart. This sentence made the scarlet blood demon slightly shocked. She put away her smile, her face became cold, and said, then just remember what you said today. You must remember it. One day in the future, you will feel what I said today was so funny. Wu Yu's inner thoughts would certainly not be swayed by her. He secretly laughed in his heart. In fact, when the other party mentioned a certain day in the future, he even showed that he was not in danger of his life today. Maybe, Wu Yu said. Do you think I will let you get through easily today? Unexpectedly, the other party suddenly smiled coldly, and with lightning speed, he suddenly stretched out his finger and touched Wu Yu's forehead. With such speed, the other party it was too fast. When Wu Yu reacted, he couldn't move. The finger sucked him tightly. When the finger touched his forehead, at that moment Wu Yu felt that his body was filled with red blood. The devil tore apart. There was something quite violent on the opponent's body, which instantly entered his forehead and even his spiritual world, and then suddenly dispersed, turning into billions of tiny spikes, which immediately penetrated in all directions of his body. In this brief moment, Wu Yu felt that the red-blooded demon had almost dissected him. However, at this moment, when the red-blooded demon touched Wu Yu and a knowing smile appeared on his lips, Wu Yu suddenly became mentally shaken. Under the extreme crushing force of the red-blooded demon, he suddenly, I feel the existence of the Ruyi golden cudgel within my body. Boom! The giant pillar-like existence suddenly shook, and a surge of golden light suddenly swept across. In a short moment, it swallowed up all the parts of the red-blooded demon that had entered his body. Only then did Wu Yu feel, it turns out that the thing that entered his body was the blood droplets from the red-blooded demon, and even the components of his body. What does she want to do? As if it were about to enter his own body. Fortunately, the red blood demon's movements were resisted by the Ruyi golden cudgel, and Wu Yu escaped from the crisis in an instant. Buzz! The red-blooded demon's eyes changed. Before she could find anything, she was knocked away by an incredible force that suddenly appeared in Wu Yu's body. It turned into countless blood droplets and spilled out, covering the surrounding ancient trees in the sky. Stained red. Whoops! However, in the next moment, those blood drops gathered together again and transformed into a human form again, becoming a girl with pure blood eyes, but her face was very pale and there was not much blood. Her scarlet eyes kept changing as she looked at Wu Yu in silence. Wu Yu was pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect that the Ruyi golden cudgel would protect him. What's going on? He was actually a little confused. This monster wants to take over your body. The blood monster is really good at this. If she is allowed to enter your body, you will be 100% under her control. Obviously, she soon noticed the existence of the Ruyi golden cudgel and she went to take a peek, but was knocked away. She was lucky. If she had made a bigger move, she might have died right now, Mingtong said lazily. I see. Wu Yu couldn't help but feel a little scared. If it weren't for the Ruyi golden cudgel, wouldn't it be very dangerous now? Only then did he truly understand the cunningness of this red-blooded demon. She pretended not to embarrass Wu Yu and made him relax his vigilance. However, she took action instantly and broke Wu Yu's mind. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Now, the moon-chasing dog looked at the scene in awe and confusion, while the scarlet blood demon stared at Wu Yu indifferently, without saying a word. What does she want to control me for? What's her intention? Wu Yu was confused. You are very good. For the sake of your honesty, I will not embarrass you and let you live. The red-blooded demon suddenly waved his hand, and then turned into blood waves again, and then into blood mist, dissipating in the forest. Among them, the forest surrounded by blood mist has only returned to tranquility at this moment. Only by looking out can one see that the blood sea in the distance is still full of blood. In the sea of blood, countless little demons were rolling and playing. When the red blood demon returned, those little demons all fell to the ground on the sea of blood, extremely pious. She actually let you go. Moon Chaser Dog was stunned and looked at Wu Yu in disbelief. Although Wu Yu couldn't figure out the reason, he couldn't leave in vain at this moment. He left quickly. After walking so far, he didn't need the moon-chasing dog to lead the way for the time being. He roughly understood how to leave Yunmengai. Mingtaki, what is this red-blooded demon thinking? How could I possibly know that I'm not a roundworm in her belly? Mingtong rolled his eyes. Wu Yu was too lazy to ask her again, but he couldn't think of a reason. This time he hurried even faster. In order to complete the task, the moon chaser also sped up. There seemed to be no other demons behind him, so more than 10 days passed. Wu Yu finally walked out of the endless sea of darkness and was exposed to the sun. The moment his whole body was bathed in the sun, Wu Yu felt as if he had finally come to life. The sun's rays burned and burned on his body. The golden flame bathed his entire body in the flame, like a human-shaped sun. After being in the endless demonic sea for such a long time, even the golden body of Nanwuabeya King Buddha was almost rotten. At this time, Wu Yu could make a loud crackling sound when he stretched his body, and his physical body also quickly returned to its peak state. This is the world that belongs to me. Wu Yu sighed sincerely. After so many twists and turns, he finally came out. Although there are no tears in my eyes, after spending more than 2 years in the Monster Clan's supreme hunting ground and experiencing life and death several times, I will still feel a little emotional when I see the light of day again. The key is that he can't wait to return to Qingtian Shushan. More than 2 years have passed, but does anyone still remember me? Behind him, the moon-chasing dog turned into a human and said angrily, by sending you here, my promise has been fulfilled. I have done my best to you. Now you can take care of yourself. If you lose your life, it has nothing to do with me. Wu Yu then said, speaking of which, I would like to thank you for seeing me all the way. Farewell. Although this moon-chasing dog has a bad temper, he finally does what he says. Without him to take care of him along the way, he would not have lost 10 lives. After all, when those monsters see the ascetics walking in the endless sea of demons, most of them will just eat them without asking why. Humph, the moon-chasing dog naturally hated Wu Yu. Being sent here was already his limit. At this moment, he snorted coldly and turned into a black demon dog again. In a blink of an eye, he plunged into the endless sea of demons. Wu Yu watched him leave. Looking at the endless ocean where the miasma is rolling, this dark and endless world is like a nightmare. I am afraid that many years from now, I will not forget it. He looked towards Qingtian and Shushan Mountain again. Wire, I'm back to fulfill our agreement. 3 years later, what changes have happened to her? Wu Yu couldn't wait any longer. He still has a communication talisman in his hand that can be sent to Shenzingyu. In fact, he can use it after leaving the supreme hunting ground. However, he has endured until now. Firstly, in the endless sea of demon, the communication talisman of a monk is easily intercepted. Moreover, the distance was too long, but because Wu Yu felt that even if Shenzingyu could receive this communication talisman, it would only increase her worries and would not be of much use. She would not risk her life to come to the endless demon sea to save herself. Now that he is out, he can explain the situation to her and then continue to return to Shushan. As he returned, he briefly told Shenzingyu what had happened in the past 2 years, about 100 words, and then passed the message talisman out. Seeing the tail light of the talisman disappear, Wu Yu couldn't help but think that Shen Xingyu would be very happy to see the news about him after 2 years of disappearance. He soared to the sky with his sword and soared upwards. For a moment, he was full of pride. I passed the 3rd grade exam today. Tomorrow, section 4 will be very easy and you will definitely pass it. This time I took the time to study for a driver's license, which took less than a month in total. At first, I insisted on practicing driving during the day, but I couldn't hold on to the 3rd semester, so I was late for the driver's license. It was helpless. After all, practicing driving was tiring and I was afraid. Unqualification affects writing, and the process is very hard. I have never been nervous about this exam, but I am also nervous this time. However, everything is settled. I will update it starting from Friday. I updated 1 chapter today, so I still owe 10 chapters. Quickly return to the top and strive to continue for 3 consecutive updates. It's empty talk and will be tested when the time comes. \U003% \U003E \U003C /Sente \U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 305. Wu Yu's sword flew above the blue sky and white clouds, passing through white clouds, bathed in the scorching sunshine, and his whole body was full of power. Leaping at high speed, the natural wind roared, causing his clothes to fly. At this moment, his heart was like an arrow, so he started at the fastest speed, and the mountains under his feet flew behind him, disappearing in the blink of an eye. With the sword in hand, the world is at ease. The endless demonic sea, the supreme hunting ground, dark and dark, is really depressing. The sun is shining high in the south, birds and beasts are running around in the forest, the vegetation is full of vitality, the mountains and rivers are vast at the foot, and the birds are singing and the flowers are fragrant in the mountains. Returning to such a world, even the simplest fragrance of flowers in the air seems hard-won. It took dozens of life and death battles to achieve all this. Of course, those dozens of battles also brought about huge changes in Wu Yu himself, allowing him to truly step into the ranks of monastics. Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan. He looked at the blue sky and Shu Mountain in the distance, his eyes were blazing and he didn't stop for a moment. The realm of swords is vast and boundless, and the blue sky and Xuanhuan Mountain are even more like miracles. The sword is cultivated vertically and horizontally, and the immortal path has no boundaries. But just when Wu Yu had just left Qingtian Shu Mountain, there was a bloody aura coming from behind. This made Wu Yu's excitement quickly fall to the bottom. It was obvious that someone was chasing him in the direction of the endless demon sea behind him. And of course Wu Yu was familiar with the smell of blood. He quickly landed on the ground and hid himself in a green valley. However, the other party was obviously chasing him. When Wu Yu discovered its existence, the other party naturally also discovered Wu Yu. Therefore, just when Wu Yu landed in the valley, he turned around and saw a cloud of blood falling directly, suddenly turning into countless blood mist, making a rustling sound, and in the blink of an eye, it was already completely covering the entire valley. The originally green valley turned into an endless demon sea in a short period of time, stained with blood mist. Many trees quickly withered and turned into ugly dead trees, like mummies that had their blood sucked away. All the birds and beasts in the valley were turned into corpses, and even the clear river turned into a river of blood in the blink of an eye. This is the power of demons. Demons are not just beasts, but all living beings, except humans, travel to a new realm of life. Red Blood Demon. When Wu Yu was alert, a river of blood flowed in front of his eyes. Sure enough, right in front of Wu Yu's eyes, he recondensed into a coquettish blood-eyed girl, who was the Red Blood Demon. When the red-blooded demon saw Wu Yu, his smile was oozing, and he said directly, "Today, I will bring you a noble demon for you to get to know." Just as he finished speaking, Not far from Wu Yu, a river that had turned into blood suddenly started to roll. Blood exploded and flew all over the sky. A giant beast suddenly appeared from the bottom of the river. At first glance, Wu Yu thought it was a river of blood. A big snake. When he took a closer look, he realized that it was not a big snake. It was a kind of monster that shocked him. Dragon, Wu Yu almost blurted out. He was too familiar with the divine dragon. The legendary divine dragon is a kind of fairy beast, an auspicious beast. It is difficult for mortals in the world, even ascetics, to see it. With a divine dragon like this, the immortal beast, no matter how you say its bloodline, must be greater than the strongest demon infant emperor in the divine continent. There is a divine dragon coiled around a golden demon suppressing pillar. Of course, that is just an image. In fact, the relationship with the divine dragon is not particularly big. The demon that came out of the blood river had blood-colored, regular dragon scales all over its body. It had 4 legs and 4 claws. It soared up. Looking at its head, it had dragon whiskers and teeth. It looked exactly like the dragon in the portrait. The head is like a cow, the eyes are like shrimps, the ears are like elephants, the neck is like a snake, the belly is like a snake, the scales are like a fish, the claws are like a phoenix, and the palms are like a tiger. The only difference is that this living fairy dragon has no horns. Also, the divine dragon is a fairy beast, but why is the dragon in front of me so ferocious and bloody? In terms of realm, this dragon is definitely not as good as the red-blooded demon next to it, but in terms of bloodline and power, it feels like it can suppress the red-blooded demon, and even has the ability to harmonize with it. It feels almost like Zhu. So, is such a mighty demon a fairy beast, and who is he? Wu Yu quickly remembered that he had heard about the existence of this noble demon in the supreme hunting ground for more than 2 years. Among the monsters, the number 1 king is the infant emperor. His body is a 9-infant beast with 9 heads in total. And the other candle emperor is said to be very close to the infant emperor in strength. The emperor Zhu, whose body is a candle dragon and becomes Zuyin, is a kind of real dragon. However, because of his cold nature and bad temper, he is not included in the ranks of immortal beasts. Even the real dragons are not willing to associate with him. Therefore became a demon. But in terms of bloodline, Zuyin may not be weaker than Zhu. The Emperor Zhu has no heirs, but he has an adopted son who is also his disciple. It is said that he is 2 or 3 times older than Zhu and is at the Kanghai realm of the Zi mansion. This adopted son is said to be brought by the Emperor Zhu in a place outside the divine continent. When he came back, he was also a divine dragon, but it was slightly inferior to the Zilong. His name seemed to be Wuxian Blood Qi. The hornless dragon is Qi. The hornless dragon in front of us is obviously the adopted son of Emperor Zhu, the Wuxian Blood Qi, who belongs to the same lineage of divine dragons as Emperor Zhu. Wu Yu remembered that it was rumored that this Wuxian Blood Qi was Zhu Ying's mortal enemy. This is understandable. One is the adopted son of the Zhu Emperor, and the other is the son of the infant emperor, which is related to the confrontation between the descendants of the 2 emperors. Zhu Ying has a kind-hearted nature, and the Wuxian Blood Qi is deeply influenced by the Zhuang. Although he is not very old, he is famous throughout the entire divine continent. Most cultivators only know about the Wuxian Blood Qi, but not Zhu Ying. The existence of the infant. Even among the demon clan, this Wuxian Blood Qi far suppresses Zhu Ying and is favored by most demons. Given time, it will definitely crush Zhu Ying and absolutely dominate the demon clan. It is said that this is also the reason why Xuanhuan wants to change Zhu Ying's character. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Unexpectedly, such a person would chase him out together with the red blood demon. Wu Yu naturally felt as if he had just flown to heaven and fallen into hell. However, he was still calm. At this time, the Wuxian Blood Qi flew up from the blood river and coiled in front of Wu Yu's eyes. Then its dragon scales and flesh changed, gradually transforming from a divine dragon into a man. This is a young man with blood-colored eyes and long hair. His long blood-colored hair reaches to his waist and is flying in the wind. His blood-colored eyes are bright and sharp. He is wearing a large white robe, spotless, with a combination of blood and white. It's a bit shocking. This Wuxian Xueqi has long and narrow eyes and thin and red lips. At first glance, he looks like a like character. Instead of looking at each other, Wu Yu really felt that Zhu was indeed much inferior in front of this demon-like character whose power could even be suppressed by the red blood demon. Of course, Zhu is still young now. The two faced each other. Wuxian Xueqi spoke directly, but his voice was very feminine, even a bit like a woman. He said, "You must be Wu Yu. Do you know who I am?" His voice was very gentle. He gradually approached Wu Yu, and in an instant he was standing in front of Wu Yu. Wu Yujing concentrated his attention and said, "Of course I know. But you are chasing me here. What are you doing?" "Nothing else, just to get to know you, the wizard of Xuanhuan." Wuxian Xueqi smiled faintly. He suddenly stretched out his hand and flicked it. A small bloody character was suddenly printed on the back of Wu Yu's hand. Wu Yu's expression changed. He raised his hand and saw that there was an ancient inscription on the back of his right hand. The word dragon. It was about the size of a fingertip, and Wu Yu could not feel its existence at all. It could only be seen with the naked eye, but it could not be erased. "What are you doing?" The opponent's behavior was unbelievable. Wu Yu thought that he was no match for him, but now he was suppressed by him, but he couldn't fight fiercely. "Haha, it's just a souvenir. Don't worry. Now that you know me, I won't stay too long. I'll say goodbye to Wu Yu. See you later." The Wuxian blood chi turned around and turned into a divine dragon, rushing up into the sky and roaring. Then, the red-blooded demon also smiled faintly and turned into a blood-colored cloud to surround the dragon. In a short period of time, the two of them entered the sea of black miasma. What is this? Based on Wu Yu's understanding of his own body, he was completely at a loss for the symbol on his hand. The originally bright color gradually dimmed, and soon there was only a faint trace left. Wu Yu used Dan Yuan to attacking and erasing them have no effect. Of course, these symbols cannot be washed clean with water. It's not a magic spell or a magic circle. According to my estimation, it's a kind of natal magical power of this Wuxian blood chi. Ming Long smiled happily. Innate magical power? So little movement. It was precisely because the movement was too small and different from other natal magical powers that Wu Yu was completely unprepared. The natal magical power does not necessarily have to be powerful. Some magical powers can even be used without anyone noticing, which is scary, Ming Long said. Do you understand how to get rid of this thing like this? He made a special trip to use this thing. There must be a conspiracy. Wu Yu felt a little depressed. Naturally, he didn't understand what the Wuxian blood chi was going to do. It's a pity, there's nothing I can do for you. Ming Tong looked like the matter had nothing to do with him. Wu Yu tried many methods without success. The weak trace did not have any impact on him for the time being, but it could not be removed. Wuxian blood chi. Wu Yu's eyes burned with flames. It was obvious that the opponent was manipulating him as a chess piece. It's not advisable to stay here for a long time. I'll leave first. Maybe when I return to Xuanhuan, someone will know how to get rid of it. Thinking of this, Wu Yu continued to return with his sword. Looking down, the originally green valley has become a place of death, with no grass growing. His disgust towards the Wuxian blood chi and the red blood demon has deepened even further. Wu Yu kept staring at the symbol along the way. He felt that one day, this thing would attack and cause unimaginable consequences. At that time, the Wuxian blood chi would definitely be hiding in the dark and laughing. What exactly do they want to do? This problem has always troubled Wu Yu. Until one day, he saw the blue sky of Shu Mountain towering into the sky. Heaven-swallowing record. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 306. Wushan Xueqi has the same status as Zhu Ying, but at best, he is just a demon descendant. His natal magical power will definitely not pose any threat to the immortal section. I am in the immortal section. I need to find someone who can understand this natal magical power and crack it. If this matter is not solved, it will be like a thorn in the eye and a thorn in the flesh. After seeing the blue sky of Mount Chu, the journey to the immortal gate of Mount Chu is not far away. I have already told Sister Shen about the supreme hunting ground. I wonder if there are still people in Shushan Immortal sect paying attention to me, who has been missing for 2 years. The most important thing is that in more than 3 years, Nangong Wei, if she really grows up, where will she be? If she heard the news of her return, would she wait for her? Because of this, Wu Yu chose to return from the sword gate of the Kingly Sword Palace, which was the place where he entered Shushan for the first time. The green mountain Shu Mountain is majestic and domineering. There are 9 layers of colorful clouds on it, and lightning roars. Countless steel chains extend from the mountainside. The ends of the iron chains are connected to ancient bronze swords, piercing the mortal sword domain. 2 of them are at Wu Yu at the moment. In front of my eyes. When he came here again, Wu Yu felt mixed emotions. He had a dream of life and death in the endless demonic sea, and finally returned to this place that haunted him. He looked into the sword gate from a distance. The person wearing cyan armor was a disciple of Kingly Sword Palace. He was mainly responsible for registering the entrance and exit of Shushan disciples. The person in charge was the same person Wu Yu met when he first came to Shushan. However, he is not the protagonist at this time. He is submissive and standing behind the other 2 monks. The chapter of has been uploaded. There were not many people greeting Wu Yu, only 2 people, namely Shenzingyu and Bailey Fi Hung. Shenzingyu's purple skirt was fluttering and graceful. When she saw Wu Yu, her eyes relaxed slightly and she smiled as she watched Wu Yu approach. When Wu Yu took the sword at his feet and suddenly fell in front of his eyes, Shenzingyu stepped forward. She gave him a hug, the fragrant breeze filled her nose, and the soft jade in her arms made Wu Yu feel the long-lost warmth. Bailey Fi Hung chuckled. Although he was still slovenly, he was a little embarrassed to meet Wu Yu. Shenzingyu patted his back, then looked at Wu Yu and said, "After reading what you said in the communication talisman, your experience is really unbelievable. The most unimaginable thing is that you are actually in the supreme hunting ground. Returning from this place is really a miracle. We know about the existence of the supreme hunting ground, but we have never heard of anyone coming out of the supreme hunting ground." Bailey Fi Hung next to him said, "Wu Yu seems to have matured after 2 years of life and death experience. As the saying goes, hardships are hard to bear. After all these experiences, Wu Yu has made great progress. It must be a blessing in disguise, right?" Shenzingyu glared at him and said, "How dare you say that? If you hadn't introduced him to this mission, he would have done something like this." Wu Yu hurriedly said, "Sister Shen, you cannot blame Palace Master Bailey for this matter. Besides, the fact that a despicable person like Haishan Gi can be killed is because of the merits of our cultivation. Besides, the matter is over, since death is you should be lucky to have escaped." "Yes, Wu Yu is very sensible," haha. Bailey Fi Hung was afraid of Shenzingyu and laughed awkwardly. They met by chance, but these 2 people became the only 2 people in Shushan to greet him on the day of his return. From their words and expressions, Wu Yu felt warmth. But he felt a little disappointed and moved behind the 2 of them, but there was still no sign of Nangong Wei. "I guess she hasn't heard about my return." In other words, it is possible that she has not returned from Shushan Samsara cave. As soon as Wu Yu thought of this, Shenzingyu said solemnly, "Wu Yu, your disappearance this time is excusable. Therefore, although you violated the regulations and did not return to the sect for more than 2 years, I have already greeted the punishment hall, so it does not count. You are at fault. Furthermore, in the Black Mountain Ghost Wing case, you made great contributions, and the Fixian Palace awarded you 2,000 merits. You can go to the Merit Palace to receive them at any time in the future, even though you have been away for 2 years. People have begun to forget about you, but it doesn't matter. You still have a long future in Xuanhuan Immortal section. This is just a small episode. After you return, you will continue to practice and forge in Duzan Sword Palace. 2,000 achievements is a lot. Wu Yu needed these moments exactly, and Shen Xingyu probably contributed to this, otherwise others would have regarded him as a dead man. Thank you, Sister Shen. Shen Xingyu checked it out and said, I think you have entered the 5th level of the Golden Elixir Dao realm. You have just entered the real path of cultivation. It is a joy to congratulate you. Now you only need to practice one Dao magical power. You can reach the standard of a Huangjian level disciple, leave the mortal sword realm and enter the Huangjian realm, which means you can go to Qingtianshu Mountain. Regarding the first avenue of magical power, you must choose carefully. Those 2,000 achievements may be able to help you. Given your qualifications, you must choose carefully. She looked further ahead, and before entering Xuanhuan, she pointed out the next most critical thing for Wu Yu. No problem, of course. As for the first magical power of the Great Dao, Wu Yu definitely does not need to exchange it from the immortal sect of Xuanhuan. He wants to get the magical power of the Monkey King. Speaking of this, Shen Xingyu said, others are no big deal, but there is one thing I still have to remind you. Seeing that she was more serious, Wu Yu listened attentively. Shen Xingyu said softly, you are sending a talisman to describe that Zhu Ying is your friend. I can understand your thoughts, but the problem is that the hatred between the two races is too strong. If someone asks in the future, you must not say that you have any relationship with Zhu Ying. Just pretend that there is no such thing as a monster. As for how to leave the supreme hunting ground, no one has ever been inside. Just give it a brief description. Don't tell others that you left because you were friendly with the monster. The supreme hunting ground. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Wu Yu was stunned when he heard these words. He naturally understood that Shen Xingyu cared about him, but he had to admit that the vast majority of Xuanhuan disciples simply could not bear to be friends with demons. If he publicizes it, he will definitely get a lot of hostility in Xuanhuan. He nodded and said, thank you, Sister Shen, for reminding me. I know this matter well and won't say more. In fact, he also understands that after leaving the Endless Demon Sea this time, there may not be many opportunities to meet Zhu Ying in the future. Although there are very few like-minded people, the hatred between the two races is too strong. If he is too careless, he will treat the two. Neither is good. You are very smart, and it is not in vain that I have been worrying about you for 2 years. By the way, the time of the 10,000 Swords Immortal War has been adjusted recently. As of today, the new 10,000 Swords Immortal War has just ended. The external challenge has just ended and the internal battle is underway. There are many people there, so it's time to go to a formal place to announce your return. After all, you are the most famous disciple in the mortal sword realm, and many people want to replace you. Shen Xingyu raised his eyebrows. Various styles. Then go. Now that I'm back, I have to tell the world, so that no one I meet on the road has to wonder why I appeared. Wu Yu also has another very important reason. As long as he appears in Wanjian Fixian Mountain and Nangongwei leaves Xuanhuan Samsara Cave, she will definitely hear the news. The number 1 on the list of 10,000 swordsmen is back, and the new generation of young people will definitely want to take his place. However, Wu Yu is now much stronger than all the Fandan disciples in the Fanjian domain. He followed Shen Xingyu and Bailey Fihung into Shu Mountain, flying with a sword among the mountains and valleys. The clouds and aura of Shu Mountain had a unique sense of purity. This magnificent world of ice and snow was fierce and cold, but also full of warmth from time to time. Returning this time, Wu Yu looked at this magnificent scenery, and felt a sense of belonging and love for this fairy gate in his heart. Sword-like mountain peaks are passing by at your feet. Many Xuanhuan disciples are practicing hard. Above the blue sky and white clouds, there are many sword cultivators flying with swords and running around. Everything is like a fairyland, quiet and peaceful. While casually chatting with the two about the past 2 years, I heard the passionate shouts of Wanji and Fixian Mountain. Around the towering peak in the clouds, countless Xuanhuan disciples were flying with their swords. Surrounded by them, the battlefield, it is a spectacular sight to practice fighting with swords. Young, passionate sword cultivators fight passionately for their own name on the list of 10,000 sword immortals. Shenzingyu asked Wu Yu to stay in one place first. With a flicker of her eye, she turned into a starlight and appeared in the center of the battlefield. When it appeared, it immediately covered up the light of the young people who were fighting. Let's stop fighting first. I have a surprise for you to see. When everyone saw it, the speaker was Shenzingyu, the sister of Galaxy Sword Saint Shenzhenjiao, an absolute big shot in Xuanhuan, and there was a surprise, so even if she interrupted the battle, no one dared to have an opinion, and most people were waiting and curious. He looked at her, wanting to see what surprise she could bring. When the surroundings were quiet and everyone was waiting, Shenzingyu smiled at Wu Yu and hooked his fingers. With her building momentum, Wu Yu understood and quickly reached his side with his sword. His voice was loud, and he said, I, Wu Yu, came back today and met all the elders, brothers and sisters. When everyone saw this person clearly and listened to the voice, they suddenly remembered Wu Yu who caused a storm in this place 3 years ago. Compared with 3 years ago, Wu Yu's spirit at this time was more enthusiastic, and even his eyes were more impactful. Looking into the eyes of hundreds of thousands of people, he didn't even feel timid at all. He was as in control of the whole place as Shenzingyu next to him. Wu Yu. It's him. Didn't he disappear for 2 or 3 years? Didn't he say that he was killed by a vicious ghost cultivator during a mission? I heard that he was dead. Even the Galaxy Sword Master couldn't find him. Why did he suddenly come back? I almost forgot about him. It's really him. I heard a news that he was taken away by a very scary demon. This news seems to have been revealed by the Galaxy Sword Master. If he really went to the demon's territory, how could he come back alive? However, no matter how suspicious everyone is, the person in front of them is definitely Wu Yu. Once again, all eyes are on you. Shenzingyu did not explain Wu Yu's situation, so at this time, she said, after the battle with the ghost cultivator, Wu Yu was taken away by the demon to the endless demon sea. However, he was blessed with good fortune and experienced life and death in the endless demon sea. After many experiences, he finally escaped from death. He has such a tenacious spirit. I think all Fandan disciples here should learn from this number 1 on the 10,000 swords immortal list. She downplayed and compressed Wu Yu's 2 years of experience. /U003 sem /U003e /U003 sem /U003 follow the official QQ public account, ID, love, read it early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003c/m /U003e /U003c/m /U003e. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 307. After Shenzingyu finished speaking, he was not prepared to explain the details. After all, this was Wu Yu's personal experience. Now that he has returned, others will not say much. Wu Yu was too lazy to stay here. He wanted to return to the War Immortal Palace. First, he could wait for Nangong Wei to come to him after hearing the news. Second, he could ponder the magical power of the Great Avenue. The magical power of the Great Avenue was very important, almost for ascetics and cultivators. The devil's trump card. Furthermore, only by possessing the magical power of the Great Dao can one truly reach Qingtianshu Mountain. This was one of Wu Yu's dreams, and it was also Feng Xiao's dream. Unexpectedly, as soon as Shen Xingyu finished speaking, a young sword cultivator flew down from the top of the list of 10,000 sword immortals and landed in front of Wu Yu. This young man had beautiful features and a hint of unruly air on his face. Looking at Wu Yu, his eyes were full of provocation. As soon as he came down, he frowned and said, "Wu Yu, last time you were number 1 in the 10,000 swords immortal list, but this time it is not necessarily the case. I just won the number 1, you are when the time comes, if I step in, will you still be the number 1? I am not convinced, I want to challenge you." Wu Yu thought of this young man. When he challenged Zhao Xianxian and He Taiyu, this young man seemed to be 5th on the 10,000 swords immortal rankings. Now that all the others have become Huangji unlevel disciples, he has leapt to the top and become the number 1. But because Wu Yu came back, it was obvious that he was no longer number 1. Clearly, he was unconvinced. This young man is not very old, but to achieve such an achievement, he is indeed a genius, not much worse than Zhao Xianxian. When he said this, many Fandan disciples in Shushan started to cheer and support him in challenging Wu Yu. In fact, everyone just wanted to know what progress Wu Yu would make in the past 2 or 3 years. Or is it as scary as before? Wu Yu, accept the challenge. You're right, it's been so long, who knows if you're still number 1 on the 10,000 swords immortal list. To be number 1 on the 10,000 swords immortal list, you have to accept the challenge from those who come after you. Isn't that how you defeated Zhao Xianxian back then? With so many people making noises, if you don't take action now, you will inevitably be ridiculed. However, Shen Xingyu smiled coquettishly. In fact, what she said before could emphasize that Wu Yu was number 1 in the 10,000 swords immortal list, which made the young man dissatisfied and come to challenge Wu Yu. As expected, the young man fell into the trap. She actually has good intentions. After all, in this monastic world, a person's ability is fundamental. When Wu Yu shows the strength worthy of his name, the other young people behind him will be like crucian carp crossing the river. He is convinced. Looking around, there are so many boys and girls in Shushan. The boys are passionate and strong, the girls are soft-hearted, and young lives are often more pure. Some are in awe, some are doubtful, some are worshipful, some are jealous, some are infatuated, and some are dismissive. Wu Yu barely hesitated before nodding and saying, "Yes, you can just take action." This understatement was really arrogant, and he even clasped his hands behind his back as he faced the boy who was now number 1 on the 10,000 swords immortal list. To be honest, Wu Yu didn't know his name at this time. "Contempt me, and you will pay the price for your contempt," the young man shouted angrily and came towards me with a sword. The sword shadows in his hands suddenly transformed into thousands of sword shadows. The sword shadows instantly condensed into a big bird with wings 100 feet long. It roared in. Wherever it went, the space was distorted and the clouds were broken. Wu Yu looked forward, as if the entire world in front of him was filled with sharp edges that could penetrate flesh and blood. Thousands of sword lights arrived in an instant, piercing Wu Yu from all directions. From a distance, they looked like a giant bird trying to devour Wu Yu. He was so confident that he didn't dodge. Many Fandan disciples were immediately dumbfounded and looked at Wu Yu with incredulous eyes. There were all sword cultivators present, and it was obvious that Wu Yu was slightly dismissive of this kind of attack. In fact, it was normal. Wu Yu could even defeat the golden stone spirit monkey from the 9th level of the demonic pill, and his strength was close to that of a 100-mile giant. In his eyes, the boy was just a 3-year-old child, so why should he dodge? The next moment, the scene made the hundreds of thousands of Xuanhuan disciples look stiff and completely convinced. That's because, when Wu Yu didn't move at all those thousands of sword energies fell on Wu Yu like a heavy downpour, and countless sword radiances pierced his flesh and blood. What was terrifying was that the sharp sword light was like raindrops hitting a rock, exploding directly into pieces. Thousands of sword energy did not even hurt Wu Yu. Such a scene made Wu Yu himself imagine that the real indestructible body should look like this. No matter how powerful your swordsmanship is, you can't even hurt me in the slightest. Ding ding ding. A dense sound of impact came over, and Wu Yu suddenly disappeared. How is that possible? The young man's face turned pale and he was extremely frightened. As soon as he discovered the huge gap between him and Wu Yu suddenly appeared in front of him and punched him in the face, causing him to fly out immediately with a mouthful. His teeth were shattered and his mouth was filled with blood. Wow, the young man suffered a huge shock in his heart and was actually frightened and cried on the spot. Although this child was extremely powerful, he was still younger and not very mature mentally. He was different from Wu Yu, who grew up in intrigues in the palace. There is no way to compare. When the young man crawled away from here, he was too embarrassed to see anyone. After leaving in a hurry, Wu Yu looked around and saw that there was silence around Wanjianfei Fairy Mountain. Everyone looked at Wu Yu with unified eyes. Many people had doubts in their hearts. Finally disappeared. For them, if Wu Yu was not a monster, how could he come out of the endless demonic sea alive? This battle proved that Wu Yu was a monster. Especially his physical body, which transcends demons and demons, is famous far and near. It is said that Black Mountain Ghost Wing killed 4 Huangjian level disciples, including He Daozai, who was at the 7th level of the Golden Core Dao realm, but in the end he was killed by Wu Yu. This young man is so arrogant and domineering, he is really a genius. Afterwards, there will be some admiring discussions. I just don't know why the Galaxy Sword Master didn't accept him as his disciple, since he paid attention to such a prodigy. This is probably a question that many people have doubts in their minds. Actually, Wu Yu has reached the 5th level of the Golden Core realm. He could have won first place at the 3rd level of the Golden Core realm back then, let alone now. When an elder told Wu Yu's realm, many people felt relieved. According to Wu Yu's past abnormality, it is estimated that no one at the 7th level of the Golden Core Dao realm is his opponent. This includes a large number of Huangjian level disciples. I just don't know if he has the Dao magical power he cultivates. Once after cultivating the magical power of the Great Dao, he is already considered a Huangjian level disciple and ranks first in the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking, so it is of no use to him. Wu Yu listened to these various discussions, and he handed over to everyone. What should be announced and what should be shown has been completed. He said, in this case, Wu Yu will not disturb the progress of the 10,000 Swords Fairy War and retreat first, got it? Shenzingyu asked him to collect the 2,000 merits first. She had already made an agreement with the people at Merit Hall. Wu Yu was about to go down when suddenly, a slightly impressive voice came out. The man said, "Wait, don't leave in a hurry." Wu Yu looked over and saw 2 people walking out of the crowd to the east. Then Yu Jian flew up into the sky and confronted Wu Yu. The 2 were holding hands. They were handsome men and beautiful women. They were so close that they envied others. It was Zhao Xianxian and He Taiyu who became Huangjian level disciples and were accepted as disciples by a Xuanhuan sword master. Wu Yu had almost forgotten these 2 figures. Why did they come out to show off at this time? What are you doing? Wu Yu didn't like these 2 people very much, so he didn't want to be polite. Zhao Xianxian held He Taiyu's jade hand, looked at Wu Yu with murderous eyes, looked him up and down, and said, "On behalf of my many disciples and compatriots in Xuanhuan, I want you to clear up our doubts." Wu Yu could probably understand that a missing and dead opponent appeared again to steal their limelight. "If you fart, let it go and don't involve others," Wu Yu said. Vulgar He Taio looked at Wu Yu coldly. Zhao Xianxian stared at Wu Yu and said, I'm just curious. What happened to you in the Endless Demon Sea for more than 2 years? What kind of demon brought you to the Endless Demon Sea? Why did you be brought to the Endless Demon Sea? How did you escape? Wu Yu, you can't fool us, you have to give an explanation to all our Shusan compatriots. He Taio answered, that's right. If you don't make it clear, we can completely suspect that you have been with demons in the past 2 years. And you were controlled by demons. There are even ulterior motives when you return to Shusan this time. The secret. When He Tai said this, there was an uproar immediately. No one had thought of this possibility before, but after thinking about it carefully, they found that He Tai and the others were right. Wu Yu did not explain clearly at all. What if they said this possibility has happened? These words caused some adverse effects and were very detrimental to Wu Yu. Shen Xingyu's expression turned cold and he said slightly angrily, this is Wu Yu's private matter. Just tell me clearly. There is no need to tell the world. Your so-called suspicion is completely nonsense, just to discredit other people's villainy behavior. You too were defeated by Wu Yu, and you are still unconvinced. If I were you, I would not beat around the bush and take action if you wanted to avenge your shame. Yes, why bother with the weird introduction? Sure enough, Zhang is still old and hot. As soon as Shen Xingyu said these words, it was Zhao Xianxian and He Taio's turn to reveal their true colors. This is indeed an overstep on their part. Shen Xingyu continued, you are just Huangjian level disciples, and I, Shen Xingyu, am an Earth Sword level disciple. I will take over and investigate the matter of Wu Yu's return. According to the rules of Shusan, there is no need to publicize it in public. Wu Yu narrowly escaped death in the Endless Demon Sea this time before he could escape. It is really shameful for the two of them to treat a gentleman with a villain's heart. Zhao Xianxian, no wonder my brother looks down on you. It's just your petty thoughts. Too heavy, no intention to do the right thing. Shen Xingyu was like this. As long as she didn't violate her authority, she didn't care. But Zhao Xianxian was so rude just now, which made her angry. With Shen Xingyu's words and her prestige in Shusan, most people were relieved despite Zhao Suingxian's instigation. /U003 sem /U003e /U003 sem /U003 follow the official QQ public account, ID, love, read it early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003c/m /U003e /U003c/m /U003e. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 308. The details of this kind of thing are not too disturbing. Besides, Wu Yu is just a Fandan disciple. Even if something happened to him by the demon, what impact would it have on a behemoth like Shusan? Fandan disciples, Fanjian domain, to be honest, are not even true Shusan disciples. In this way, it was Zhao Xianxian and He Taio's turn to be embarrassed. The verbal attacks they had prepared for a long time were completely suppressed by Shen Xingyu. The two of them were like flies, neither leaving nor staying. Wu Yu saw their current awkward situation. He smiled and said, actually, it is normal for the two of you to be suspicious, but they both think too highly of me, Wu Yu. I am just a young Fandan disciple. Even if I am controlled by a demon, what kind of disturbance can be caused here? I have to say that the two of you have very rich imaginations. However, since you two have come up, you can't go back empty-handed. Let's open up the sky and tell the truth. It's just that you were defeated by me last time. I feel unhappy. Convinced, now that I am a disciple, I am definitely making rapid progress and have reached the 6th level of the Golden Core realm. If you want to challenge me, Wu Yu, you can go directly, I will not refuse. As soon as these words came out, everyone started to look forward to it again. Wu Yu and this pair were also old enemies. Zhao Xian was arrogant and had the inheritance of the heart-killing sword Immortal, and He Taiyu possessed the Shushan Immortal sect. He and the head of the Tianyi clan family are both extraordinary figures, but they were crushed and defeated by Wu Yu. He has been furious for the past 3 years. If he does not defeat Wu Yu, he is afraid that it will affect his Taoist heart. You're right. If you want to fight directly, don't slander others and act like a bitch. Wu Yu is so stubborn. I can't stand these two people. Zhao Xianxian. They spend the whole day in pairs and envy others. As time goes by, I will also find a Taoist companion to show off. Mouth New Chapter L section. It's really infuriating that you two are still holding hands. Zhao Xuanxian's reputation in Shushan is worse than Wu Yu's, so it's no wonder that few people agree with him. At this time, Wu Yu said this. If Zhao Xianxian still refused to fight, he would be a lost dog. He was scolded by Shen Xingyu. Just when he was so angry and confused, he looked at each other and He Taiyu, and saw his charming face. The beauty's eyes were red with anger, and she became angrier immediately, saying, "You can rest for now and watch your husband avenge his shame." No, this Wu Yu only has the power of words. If I defeat him, I don't need you, He Taiyu said anxiously. Wu Yu interrupted them and said, in front of the public, "Stop showing off your affection, and come together. I can still give you a hand." "Shut up, that's unreasonable." Zhao Xuanxian's face turned red, and he directly pulled out the long sword, a magical weapon. After a closer look, he saw that his magical weapon had also changed. It was much better than the previous one. It was estimated to be worth thousands of merits. Sure enough, after becoming a disciple, is extraordinary. He Taiyu flew far away with his sword and did not participate in the battle, but he had already taken out the Zui Yunbao, an arrow that had once posed a certain threat to Wu Yu. He instantly knocked the arrow on the bow, and when he was ready, he aimed it at Wu Yu's eyes. Possibly giving Wu Yu a fatal blow, it can be discovered that He Taiyu has actually undergone tremendous changes. Not only has his elixir increased, but his bow and arrow skills have also made huge leaps. Judging from the situation where Wu Yu crushed the top spot on the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking just now, Zhao Xianxian naturally knew that his opponent was terrifying. If we join forces, I'm afraid we only have a 70% chance of defeating Wu Yu. This time, there must be no mercy. A murderous intention flashed in Zhao Xuanxian's eyes. He probably doesn't have the magical power. Let's just use the magical power to kill him and attack him at the same time. Zhao Xianxian and He Taiyu are almost mentally connected. In fact, as long as their eyes meet, they know what the other is thinking. But Wu Yu still made no movement at all, looking at them with a dull expression. Faintly, someone could be heard discussing. Zhao Xianxian has made terrible progress in the past 3 years. He is considered to be extremely outstanding among Huangjian level disciples. The ordinary 7th level golden elixir realm is no match for him. He has cultivated the Tianhe dazzling gold sword Qi from the heart-killing sword Immortal. This kind of magical power is the most terrifying. He Taiyu is not weak either. His Tianyi tribe's magical power, Human Hao Sun, is said to be able to create a Sunday. What tricks the two of them had could not be hidden in the Shushan Immortal Gate, so Wu Yu could easily figure it out. After hearing this, Wu Yu actually became more eager for the great power. He couldn't wait to kill these two people and study the great power. But he was also curious, what abilities could these two have with their magical powers? The 1-on-2 battle started with He Taiyu. Suddenly, red flames burned on He Taiyu's body, especially between his eyebrows, revealing a circular pattern. The pattern was a bit like a formation, refining fire and burning. The wind and fire surged into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, Wu Yu discovered that He Taiyu's whole body exploded and turned into pieces. Those scenes were indeed shocking. Of course, Wu Yu knew very well that the other party was not really dying due to explosion, but a special way of displaying the magical power of the great Dao. The next moment when he Tai exploded, countless fragments suddenly burned, and the fire shot into the sky, and he was filled with rage for a moment. It rolled like a river and swept across it quickly. Many onlookers felt the heat and retreated one after another. The scene was extremely chaotic for a while. Wu Yu was also engulfed by the crimson flames immediately. In the blink of an eye, it was as if he fell into a world of flames, with countless rages hitting his body and burning at will. To be honest, Wu Yu did feel some pain. You must know that his golden body of Namo Baya King Buddha is under the ground. Forged in the Baya furnace, his resistance to fire is the strongest. This magical power of Hao Sun in the world can make him feel a little pain, which is actually pretty good. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. In other words, even Shen Xingyu couldn't resist the fierce fire with his body without using Dan Yuan to protect his body, and neither could Zhu Ying. To be honest, He Taiyu's Holy Sun magical power is indeed very powerful, but when it was used on Wu Yu, the effect was only about 10%. Looking from the outside, there is a huge scorching sun next to Wanjian Fixian mountain. The fire is rolling and gushing out, shining brightly on the heaven and earth. The scorching heat of this scorching sun can be felt for thousands of miles around. It seems that there is really an extra sun in the world, burning far away. Everyone everywhere was sweating profusely. The Shushan disciples couldn't help but sigh. They felt that Wu Yu seemed to have underestimated He Tai and Zhao Xianxian. In fact, Wu Yu could only laugh. Using flames to deal with himself, who had the golden body of Nanwu Baya King Buddha, was just looking for abuse. However, Zhao Suingxian's Tianhe dazzling golden sword Qi must be paid attention to. At the moment when the flames were enveloped, a domineering sword light appeared in the anger, and suddenly the golden sword light that was 10 feet long appeared in Wu in front of Yu's eyes. There are swords that are vertical and horizontal, extremely sharp. Zhao Xianxian is holding this Tianhe Suanjin sword Qi, which is somewhat similar to Wu Yu's former Taoist technique, Dao Jin sword technique, but its power is much more terrifying than Dao Jin sword technique. There is probably nothing that this dazzling golden sword energy cannot cut through. Of course, if I really want to kill Wu Yu, I am afraid that Wu Yu's golden body of Nanwu Baya King Buddha will be torn apart. After seeing two kinds of magical powers, Wu Yu felt that they were really powerful. He had already used the strength of these two people to the extreme, but he unexpectedly ran into himself. At this time, Wu Yu and Zhao Xianxian were face to face. Zhao Xianxian sneered and moved towards Wu Yu, who was trapped in the middle of the human Hao Sun by the flames. Wu Yu took out the 9 directions demon suppressing pillar and held it in his hand. Holding it in his hand, he looked up at Zhao Xianxian again. When Zhao Xianxian and Wu Yu made eye contact, he suddenly felt dizzy, as if his whole eyes were burning. Ah! Zhao Xianxian was in pain, as if going crazy, holding the sword energy and killing violently in chaos. The magical power is good, but it's a pity that the person who uses it is not good at it. Wu Yu laughed. When the opponent came to kill him with He Xian's golden sword energy that day, he blocked it with the 9 directions suppressing demonic pillar, and the opponent was completely unable to attack. At that time, Zhao Suingxian's eyes recovered, and he saw a scene that made him tremble in his heart. Wu Yu easily blocked his killer move, and he was still under the burning of the bright sun. I've said it before, once you are defeated by me, the gap between you and me will only get bigger and bigger, until there is a world of difference. At this point, Wu Yu used his stick to deflect the opponent's sword, and used his backhand to the stick hit Zhao Xianxian on the head. Well, when Zhao Xianxian was most frightened, he smashed down like a cannonball, smashing out from the bottom of the bright sun in the world, and smashing onto the ground with a crash. Boom! The earth trembled, Zhao Suingxian's head was bruised and bleeding. He looked at the sky in shock, not daring to move. In fact, Wu Yu controlled his strength and did not kill him, but it also broke his bones and muscles, leaving him unable to move but watching. That's Zhao Xianxian. For a moment, everyone who was still worried about Wu Yu felt a panic in their hearts. Zhao Xianxian was defeated directly, and with the help of Haori in the world. When seeing Zhao Xuanxian's disastrous defeat, the one who was most emotionally disturbed was undoubtedly He Taiyu. He Taiyu controlled this magical power just outside the bright sun of the human world. At this moment, the Hao sun in the world shrank violently, and even she could not control it. At this moment, Wu Yu suddenly appeared in front of her, and the Zhufang demonic suppression pillar had been pressed against He Taiyu's forehead, and was with such a poke, the bright sun in the world disappeared. He Taiyu's whole body went limp and she stared at him blankly. At this moment, she felt like she was fighting a strong man from the Kanghai realm of Zifu. That feeling of powerlessness made her mind go blank. "Take your man and get out of here. Don't mess with me," Wu Yu said. He Taiyu hurriedly backed away, looked at Wu Yu, and then at Zhao Xianxian who was lying on the ground. He suddenly burst into tears and ran away without caring about Zhao Xianxian, leaving hundreds of thousands of people watching the farce and looking at each other in shock. Many people laughed. It seems that the relationship between the two is not that strong. However, when they look at Wu Yu again, their mood is definitely more shocking. In their hearts, Wu Yu is like the god of war at this moment. Wu Yu suddenly felt a gaze, and when he looked up, there seemed to be a star in the sky. /U003 sem /U003e /U003 sem /U003 follow the official QQ public account, ID, love, read it early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003c/m /U003e /U003c/m /U003e. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 309. It should be the Galaxy Sword Saint, Shenzhenjiao. Otherwise, there would not be such stars during the day. However, when Wu Yu just noticed the star flickered for a moment, then disappeared, and he must have left. He's still paying attention to me. Wu Yu vaguely heard before that Shenzhenjiao went to look for him after he was taken away by the BA snake. Wu Yu has never met this person so far, so he doesn't know what his attitude is towards him. From the current point of view, at least there is no malicious intent. While he was paying attention to Shenzhenjiao, the Shushan disciples in the Mortal Sword region cheered for his strong performance. Two geniuses at the 6th level of the Golden Core realm, who were once among the best in the Mortal Sword region, were performing with the supernatural power of the Great Dao. Wu Yu had no resistance at all in front of him. Wu Yu was simple and rude, and defeated the two of them easily, which really shocked many Fandan disciples, and even many of the 4 major sword-level disciples were amazed. Zhao Xianxian and Zhao Xianxian are considered top geniuses in the entire Shushan Immortal sect, but compared with Wu Yu, they are like pearls of rice. Sure enough, even after missing for 2 or 3 years, Wu Yu is still the same Wu Yu as before, domineering and arrogant. With his current level, he will probably become a blockbuster when he reaches the Yellow Sword territory and ascends to Qingtianshu Mountain. There are too many disciples of the 4 great sword levels on the Qingtianshu Mountain, and even the descendants of the Shu Mountain Sword Master. These people have never taken us Fandan disciples who have entered Shu Mountain through our own efforts into the eyes. Waiting for Wu Yu going up there will definitely give them a huge impact. It can also be regarded as a fight for our generation. At this moment, almost all praises were focused on Wu Yu, and even if Zhao Xianxian woke up, he could only pretend to faint in such a situation where thousands of people despised him. At this moment, what was most broken for him was not his body, but his heart. He was easily defeated by Wu Yu, and his 3 years of preparation were in vain. Facing this superior opponent who completely crushed him, he felt only deep frustration at this moment. What was even more frustrating was that He Taiyu abandoned him and ran away. "Everyone, I'm back today. I need your attention in the future. Wu Yu won't disturb everyone anymore and takes his leave. This return and appearance probably had this effect. As long as it spread to the Qingtianshu mountain, Wu Yu would be very satisfied. Let's go. Shenzingyu was quite satisfied with his performance. He was proud of his performance. He immediately fluttered his sword and left with Wu Yu. Bailey Fiheng returned to Duzan Sword Palace first. On the way, Shenzingyu looked back charmingly, stared at Wu Yu with bright eyes, and said with a smile, "My good brother, you are incredible. Don't tell my sister that your current combat power is on par with the 7th level of the Golden Core Realm, or even the 3rd level. Is it 8-fold? You should be able to do it if you work harder." Wu Yu smiled faintly. In fact, he was humble. Nowadays, it is mainly because the golden body of Namo Baya King Buddha is too strong that it has such a crushing effect. You are truly a miracle, but the future is still long. My sister is waiting for you to go to Qingtianshu Mountain. Then you can really shine in Shu Mountain. Maybe one day, you can also become the Shu Mountain Sword Master. By then, the entire divine continent is yours to walk sideways. She didn't know that Wu Yu had only one ultimate goal, to become an immortal. Shenzingyu and Wu Yu chatted all the way, and they were never bored when talking to beauties. But what Wu Yu was thinking about was Nangong Wei. He wanted to return to the Immortal War Palace as soon as possible. If Nangong Wei heard the news of his return, will definitely come to her. However, Shenzingyu first took Wu Yu to the Hall of Merit and received the reward of 2,000 sword hearts. Wu Yu stopped by and sold some unnecessary sundries at Yubao Pavilion, thus getting about 1,000 of Yuan Jindan, plus the remaining 2,000 Yuan Jindan. He has a total of approximately 5,000 achievements. This wealth is quite a lot for Shenzingyu. If you have these merits, you can go to the Divine Power Palace to exchange for a very good magical power. The value of magical powers is generally very expensive. The simplest ones start with 1,000 merits. Shenzingyu came here this time because he actually wanted to give him a gift. Wu Yu checked it and chose a magical power that suited him. However, Wu Yu shook his head and said, "Sister Shen, there is no rush in this matter. I want to find out whether there is a suitable magical power from the changed Taoist first." Shenzingyu nodded and said, "It would definitely be best if it was passed down by ancestors. Wu Yu, the most important thing for you is to practice a magical power and become a disciple of Huangjian. You cannot worry about other things now. With Huangjian as a top disciple, he is considered one of the core disciples of Shushan, so it is easier to go out to do things." Wu Yu naturally understood this. He had to become a Huangjian level disciple before he could return to Dongyu Kingdom and the Tongtian sword sect. "Then I won't disturb you. There is another summons talisman I gave you last time. I have a few primary and tail talismans here. If you have any trouble, you can come to me at any time." She left the tail talisman and placed the talisman in Wu Yu's hand. After Wu Yu took it, he was even grateful. He was indeed lucky to meet a sister like Shenzingyu who was willing to help him in Shushan. Seeing the grateful expression in his eyes, Shenzingyu covered his mouth and smiled, saying, "Are you touched?" "Actually, sister, I also like you, cherish your talent, and know that you will have great fortune in the future, so I cherish you. I'm afraid that others will ruin this good idea like yours." Although he said this, Wu Yu still thanked her. She was one of the people Wu Yu respected in this huge Shu mountain, just like Su Yanli of the Tongtian sword sect, who gave Wu Yu the power when he was still weak. A lot of help. Of course, Shenzingyu is more gentle. In this vast mortal sword realm, Shenzingyu is synonymous with all kinds of charm. After bidding farewell to Shenzingyu, Wu Yu returned to Kishan Peak, the immortal palace of war. After not returning for 2 years, the thickness of the ice and snow on Kishan Peak increased a little, and many ice and snow plants became more and more prosperous, such as the cedar, which was covered with ice crystals, as if they were gems, became trees. After returning to Kishan Peak, Wu Yu walked among the huge palaces. There was no one in the palace, and no matter how light his footsteps were, there would be echoes. From time to time, he looked at the distant mountains, the ice and snow, and waited. If Wei Er leaves the reincarnation cave and hears the news of my return, I estimate that she will be able to arrive within 10 days. After all, he was a young man. He hadn't seen her in 3 years, and he missed her a little, so he spent time waiting. Time passed, but the sweetheart had not arrived. Looking around, the mountains and rivers were beautiful, but there was no one there. 10 days later, Wu Yu felt a little tormented. Nangong Wei was still nowhere to be seen. He even went out to inquire, but there was no news about her in the sword domain. No one even knows about the Shushan Samsara cave. I'm afraid she's still in the Samsara cave. It's better. You don't have to wait for me. After hearing that I'm missing, Wu Yu relaxed when he thought of this. Since he couldn't wait, he didn't wait any longer. In the early morning, he sat cross-legged on the top of Kishan Peak and looked at the thousands of miles of mountains and rivers in the sword domain. In the distant clouds and mist, many Shushan disciples were flying with their swords, rising up to the sky and down to the earth, their swords soaring into the sky. Minglong, how can I obtain the great power of the great sage equaling heaven? Wu Yu was thinking. Minglong would have to make conditions for himself again this time. In the field of vision, the little girl suddenly appeared, stretched out and said, "You infatuated child," finally asked, "Grandma, I thought you didn't want to know, and you even wanted to delay the serious business of cultivation." Mingtong looked at him with disdain. Obviously she is just a little kid, but she still calls herself Grandma. Wu Yu is now familiar with her, and laughing and playing is normal. "Oh, you little brat, you rebelled in front of Grandma. Do you believe I braised you and steamed you?" Minglong bared his teeth and claws, trying to come up and pinch his face. After quarreling for a while, she spread her hands and said, "To be honest, I can't do anything about the magical power, no matter how good you promise me." "Why?" Wu Yu frowned. He was bound to obtain the great sage Kishan's magical power. "It's very simple. The magical power of the Great Way is different from the Taoism. The traces and imprints of blood on it are too heavy. Moreover, the Monkey King is an immortal. His magical power is so great. Even if he knows the secret, it is impossible for a mortal to practice it. Success is only possible if it is taught by him personally, just like the Disha transformation technique. So the only way is that you try to get in touch with the Ruyi Golden Cudgel. I did the same thing at the beginning, so I replaced my previous magical power and started from scratch. Cultivated. The magical powers that each cultivator can master are limited. If he wants to get better ones in the future, he can only get rid of the imprint of the magical powers and practice again, which is very energy consuming. Most people will not do this unless they encounter the magical powers later. It's really great. After hearing what Minglong said, Wu Yu relaxed a little, so as not to owe Minglong any more. He didn't even know how much he owed her. However, Minglong immediately undermined his confidence and said, "Don't be too happy too early. This Ruyi Golden Cudgel is such a divine object. It is not something you can get just by trying to get the great power. I think back then, you grandma, I spent 30 years trying to please this Ruyi Golden Cudgel day and night, but it was only by chance that I began to gain his permission, receive his guidance, and begin to cultivate his first great magical power. 30 years. This really scared Wu Yu. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Wu Yu felt that she had a very relaxed expression when she talked about practicing the great sage Kishan's magical power. You didn't ask earlier. Mingtong rolled his eyes and said, "Rogue. Wu Yu is not even 30 years old yet. How can he have 30 years to figure out a great magical power? By the time he has finished figuring out this great power, geniuses of Zhu level will reach the level of Shenzhen Jiao." Minglong smiled and said, 30 years is a long time for you little brat, but for Grandma, I just snap my fingers for a moment. The magical power of the Monkey King is the divine power of heaven, the magical power of an immortal. How can it be so easy? Although you will spend another 30 years here, in the long run, your competitors will definitely be far inferior to you. Why, do you want to give up? Wu Yu was indeed a little confused. In fact, it was obvious to him that the Immortals' magical powers were probably even more heaven-defying than those of the entire divine continent. But the problem is that the acquisition time is too long. Although 30 years is nothing to Ming Long, for Wu Yu, focusing on this for 30 years will make him miss a lot of opportunities. How to choose is indeed a big question. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 310. Forget it, I think you should give up. If you use these 30 years to practice, you can become a Shushan sword master. As for the magical power of the Great Dao, you can practice any one until you think 30 years is a short time. When the time comes, you can think about it again, erase all the magical powers, and practice them again. Although you are starting from scratch, you will lose a lot of combat effectiveness in the short term, but in the long run, as long as you finally use the Immortals' magical powers of heaven. It's still scary to understand everything. Ming Long let out a long sigh. Obviously, she was stimulating Wu Yu. I think back then, when I got this Ruyi golden cudgel, all my magical powers had already been formed, so I didn't have the opportunity to make the choice you do now. It's just that I found that from your perspective, making this choice does require a lot of courage. Maybe you will be killed before you succeed in these 30 years? Wouldn't that be worth the loss? After saying that, Ming Tong, who didn't have to make this choice, smiled happily. Let me think about it. Wu Yu closed his eyes. Faced with such an extremely difficult choice, his mind would definitely be confused. Ming Long has never revealed the details of the Monkey King's magical power, apparently because the process of obtaining it is very troublesome. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Should I devote 30 years of cultivation time to communicate with the Ruyi Golden Cudgel, or should I choose the second best, use 5,000 merits to exchange for a magical power, practice it first, and then replace it when the time comes? 30 years is too long, so long that I don't know how many times I will die. At this time, almost all ascetics will lose their courage. However, who can be willing to settle for second best before the most important treasure? Think carefully, what is the most important? Ming Long said the last thing before disappearing in front of him. What is most important? Wu Yu couldn't understand for a while. There are two roads in front of us. The first road is too difficult to walk and requires too much courage. The second way is too unwilling. There is obviously a better one, but he can't choose it. How can Wu Yu be willing to practice a magical power inferior to that of the Monkey King? My life is not even 30 years in total. What will happen to me, Wu Yu, in 30 years? If I give up the opportunity to practice my magical powers, what disadvantage will I have? At least Qingtianshu Mountain will never be accessible. At this juncture, Wu Yu slowly opened his eyes and looked at the endless world. He suddenly understood something. Cultivation sometimes requires courage that ordinary people cannot understand. Wu Yu wanted to become an immortal, and if he wanted to become an immortal, he had to do his best, so he was unwilling to choose the second path, and he was strongly unwilling. At that moment, after making the decision, my heart actually burned like fire. His gaze was intense, burning like fire, and the snow surrounding his eyes melted immediately. I have made a decision, Wu Yu suddenly roared, causing the forest to tremble. What? Ming Long had just disappeared, and was startled at this moment. He came out in a panic and looked at Wu Yu. Wu Yu looked at Ming Long with firm eyes. At this moment, as if his soul had been sublimated, he said word by word, "My choice is to have this divine power. If I want to become an immortal, I must cultivate the most heaven-defying way." Are you crazy? Do you want to spend such an important 30 years in seclusion? How much good fortune will you miss? Minglong was incredible. In fact, she understood Wu Yu's situation. She naturally felt that Wu Yu was actually there is no need to directly come into contact with this kind of heavenly power. Although there will be some losses when the time comes to replace it, it can be said to be mastered in the end. Wu Yu smiled faintly. He did not answer Ming Long, but went straight into the rhythm. The reason why he made such a decision was that Wu Yu had extremely strong self-confidence in his heart. This confidence comes from his similarity to the unparalleled Monkey King in the Blazing Fire, both in character and will. However, he found that Ming Long was far from the unparalleled Monkey King in every aspect. The biggest difference was that Ming Long was a woman, while the Monkey King was male. Ming Long is the inheritor of the previous generation, but she is also an unsuitable inheritor. Therefore, her 30 years are not a reason to restrain Wu Yu and make him timid. Why does it take her 30 years and it's impossible for me to obtain this divine power in 1 year? It was precisely because of such a strong spiritual will in his heart that he made such a choice. Even if it takes me a long time, I still have to get this magical power. My way should be to go against heaven, and courage should come first. There should be no road in this world that I dare not take. If not, how can one become an immortal? Become an immortal. Wu Yu's strong and burning will made Wu Yu's head spin at the moment. He ignored Minglong's advice and went directly back to the underground palace where Qishan Fen was retreating, completely closed it, and then sat cross-legged in the middle of the underground palace, in the rich world of Shu Mountain. In the aura, he performed the immortal ape transformation and transformed into a golden ape. The wall in front of him was very bright, like a mirror. Wu Yu saw himself in the mirror. With his golden hair, strong body, sharp eyes, and explosive power, you can be impressed at first sight. This is me. Wu Yu only has one way to communicate with the Ruyi golden cudgel, and that is to visualize the mental ape. Visualize that there is endless fire in the inner ape. In the golden fire, the unparalleled Monkey King is wearing armor and a blood-red cloak. His feathers are soaring to the sky. The wish-fulfilling golden cudgel is held in his hand, destroying the sky at every turn. Destroy the earth, and silence will suppress the world. How domineering, how heroic, how arrogant, how scornful. Looking at himself in the wall, Wu Yu was very aware of the huge gap between himself and the great sage Qishan, the victorious Buddha. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Not only in terms of strength, but also in terms of spirit and will. Comparing the two, Wu Yu is just a newborn, but his spiritual will is the master of heaven and earth. The great sage equaling heaven. It means equal to the balance of the heavens. The Buddha who fights to defeat the Buddha lives by fighting, and the winner is the king and the hero. These two titles are the embodiment of his will. It has to be said that every time he visualizes the mental ape, the other person is able to shock him. Wu Yu is in a thrilling state, looking at the golden Monkey King in the fire. Every time the eyes collide, it is a spiritual breakthrough for Wu Yu. Sublimation. I want to be him. I don't know when Wu Yu felt an extremely strong desire. He looked at himself in the wall, then at the Monkey King in the blazing fire, and then at himself. By repeating this cycle, he could easily see where his future efforts would be. This encounter can be described as shocking to the soul. To Wu Yu, this unparalleled Monkey King in the blazing fire is no longer an existence, but a way. A way that cannot be explained in words, but is complete and reaches the sky. My future way. Cultivating the Tao depends on understanding, fortune, destiny, and choice. Wu Yu, unintentionally, is a decision in all aspects. Compared with other geniuses, he dares to choose more, and the choice he made this time, to a certain extent, broke through the realm of his own heart and allowed him to his spiritual will, and even his Tao have been sublimated to a certain extent. This kind of embodiment and sublimation is of great benefit to tempering the golden elixir. As the outline of the Dao in Wu Yu's eyes became clearer and clearer, the speed at which he was refining the golden elixir was increasing rapidly. In the realm of golden elixir, as long as the Taoist heart is diligent, it is not difficult to increase the elixir. Call. His golden immortal ape's body was covered with golden flames, and the entire underground palace was ablaze. As the fire burned, Wu Yu's eyes became more and more intense. How did he do it? Minglong was observing him all the time. When he felt that Wu Yu's spirit was rising sharply, his Taoist heart became stronger, and he understood the world better. He has not yet reached the realm of inquiry, but he has such a strong Taoist heart. Could it be that he is really more suitable to be the inheritor of the great sage Qishan than me? Minglong also doubted himself. In fact, if I had the same personality as Wu Yu, if I had Wu Yu's boldness and carefulness, and if I would not be carried away by the inheritance, I might not have died. He knew it would take 30 years, but he dared to try and was not intimidated. But I was impatient and couldn't wait for a moment to become stronger. Could it be that this is the difference between him and me? It's also that the great sage doesn't like me. The reason? Of course Wu Yu didn't understand what Minglong was thinking. He now only has one belief in his heart, and that is to become that being in the blazing fire, and like him, become an immortal, look down on all living beings, and roam the heavenly palace. Switch again and again, look at yourself, and then look at the mental ape. How long has passed? In fact, Wu Yu has long forgotten the time, and even forgotten that Nangong Wei will be looking for him. At this moment, he only has one belief in his heart. He even forgot about the magical power of the Great Avenue, but was fighting against the great sage Qishan. Looking at each other, find yourself, find a self that is trying to get closer to you, but is not the same. Day and night cycle, and the years change. Wu Yu only felt that it had been 30 years since they were looking at each other. He originally thought that he would be afraid of the passage of such a long time and would take into account a lot, but in reality, on this road, he only has one heart and one mind. Tao, time is not that important anymore. One day, when his spiritual will was so intense that it reached an unprecedented level, and he felt like tearing apart the order of everything he saw, in a daze, he heard the unparalleled Monkey King in the golden fire speaking to him. Speak for yourself. The immortal realm has collapsed, all the immortals have perished, I have died, and I am the only one who can break the situation. Wu Yu heard this sentence very vaguely, but it kept echoing. Even under the shocking voice, he only remembered the last 7 words, which were, the only one who can break the situation. He couldn't move and could only look at the scene in front of him in shock. Suddenly, in the roaring fire, the Monkey King wearing armor came walking on the fire cloud. In a blink of an eye, he was in front of him. Such close contact made Wu Yu feel suffocated. Among. It is now said that you have the magical power of outlaw clones. When it is completed, you will have hundreds of thousands of clones, and you can serve as millions of heavenly soldiers and generals. Heaven-swallowing record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 311. Wu Yu heard these words very clearly. His vision was completely blocked. In just an instant, a wave of enthusiasm rushed to his dantian. On the golden elixir, there was a symbol condensed on it. The symbol was like a small monkey, with a dark golden color, looked particularly dazzling on top of Wu Yu's light golden elixir. Boom! When the magical symbol was carved on the golden elixir, all the scenes in front of him suddenly disappeared. Wu Yu stood in the empty underground palace, exhausted. He was still in deep shock, and his mind was blurry. Just doing this I had a long dream, and I still haven't fully woken up. His whole body was still burning like fire. Wow! Suddenly, there was a girl crying beside him, and Wu Yu regained consciousness. The surrounding area was a dark but aura-rich underground palace. The crying little girl in front of him was none other than the one who was so contented before. Ming Long, who saw this girl crying with pear blossoms all over her face, looked at Wu Yu with her lips pouted, as if she wanted to eat Wu Yu. "Why are you crying?" Wu Yu really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, he had never seen her suffer before. "It's not fair, wow, it's not fair." Ming Tong covered his mouth and cried bitterly, jumping up and down anxiously. "Why is it unfair?" Wu Yu was stunned. Ming Tong's face turned red with anger and said, "Oh, this old bastard, he favors boys over girls. In order to obtain this outlaw clone's supernatural power, I first spent 30 years communicating, and then spent 3 years reluctantly erasing myself. I have already achieved great success. It took another 30 years to imprint this divine power on my body, and I had eaten so much in it. It's miserable, it's miserable. It's your turn. I'll give it to you in 3 days, and I'll brand it on you personally, so you don't have to practice, and you can directly use your magical power. Tell me, isn't this unfair?" Oops, it's useless for me to respect this old bastard so much. I didn't expect him to be such a shameless old thing. Wow. What? I have obtained supernatural powers, so I don't need to practice. Wu Yu was extremely shocked. After careful inspection, he found that there was already a mark on the golden elixir. With a slight touch, he could experience the existence of magical powers. In his intuition, it was obvious that this magical power can be directly cultivated. As long as Wu Yu immerses his mind in it, he can feel its various mysteries and even its methods of growth and expansion. Damn it, you got an advantage and you are still pretending to be stupid. Look at Grandma, I will deal with you. Ming Long rushed up, but unfortunately she was actually in the Ruyi golden cudgel, and this shadow was just for Wu Yu to see. Wu Yu finally understood that the old bastard she was talking about who favored boys over girls was the Monkey King. That's right. If he had mastered the heavenly power that he originally thought was extremely difficult within 3 days, after Ming Long made a slight comparison, he would indeed find that the gap was really huge. Okay, don't make trouble. There is a gap between people. You are lucky enough to meet me and have the opportunity to bring you back to the world in the future. Wu Yu hit her with a smile. This made Ming Tong extremely angry, crying and angry, and threatened that when she came back to life, she would kill Wu Yu's whole family in order to relieve the hatred in her heart. Heaven, earth, you and that old bastard are not the same thing, and you actually teamed up to bully a weak woman like me. Ming Long went crazy for a long time, and finally calmed down, and then remembered that he had spent 30 years testing himself. Wu Yu, it turned out that Wu Yu was done in 3 days. This was really a slap in the face to himself. However, in fact, Wu Yu felt that 30 years had passed since that fateful event. It was like he was watching the passage of time in one place for 30 years. Perhaps, it really took him 30 years. It's just that this method is mysterious and he can't understand it. When Ming Long was no longer distressed, Wu Yu remembered those details. The first thing that came to mind was when the Monkey King spoke for the first time. The voice was extremely shocking. It was so shocking that Wu Yu couldn't hear clearly. I only remember 7 people. There is only one person who can break the situation. Why, the breaker. The great sage Kishan was originally an immortal. He was supposed to be high in the heavenly palace and enjoy the blessings of all living beings. Why did he disappear and leave behind a legacy? If it hadn't been for a catastrophe, why would even his Ruyi golden cudgel be wandering outside? Vaguely, Wu Yu felt that when he became the inheritor, it would not only be for his own immortality, but also some other responsibilities and missions. Uncle Sun, who are you? Perhaps you are the Monkey King himself. Wu Yu couldn't help but his eyes turned red when he thought of the old man. The days of the Tongtian sword sect, the old man's expectations for him, and the warmth of the Ruyi golden cudgel were just like yesterday. The precious iron at the bottom of Tianhe town is his family heirloom. Sun Wudao. Enlightenment. Wu Yu, what's going on? Ming Long looked at him with wide eyes. Oh, it's okay. Wu Yu woke up from his deep thoughts. He looked at Ming Long and suddenly found that her angry look was quite cute. Regardless of her long life, she was a bit like a younger sister. Now I think of the second sentence, which is, I have now been told about your magical power of outlaw clones. When it is completed, you will have hundreds of thousands of clones, and you can serve as millions of heavenly soldiers and generals. Extra-legal clone. This is the name of this magical power. On the day of great success, there will be hundreds of thousands of clones. This is an exaggeration. Wu Yu remembered that this was the magical power that Ming Long once said, but Ming Long was far from being able to have hundreds of thousands of clones. Can he be a general with millions of heavenly soldiers? The so-called heavenly soldiers and generals are all gods. Isn't the number of 1 million a bit exaggerated? Wu Yu trembled a little when he thought of these words. However, the original indestructible body was also described in this way. Forget it, Grandma, I won't argue with you. You can take care of yourself from now on. Ming Long was still angry and didn't want to say more to Wu Yu. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Wu Yu is now immersed in this outlaw clone and doesn't bother to talk to her. He concentrated on communicating with the magical brand on the golden elixir, and suddenly understood a lot of information. Wu Yu quickly understood about this extra-legal clone. Outlaw clone is a kind of clone technique. Among the great magical powers, there are also those who can separate clones, but it is really incomparable with this immortal magical power. Generally speaking, there are 3 or 4 levels of magical powers, which are already the top level. This extra-legal clone actually has 10 levels, and its value is obviously almost the same as the indestructible body. 10 levels. The first 2 levels can transform into 10 clones. Among them, the 10 clones at the second level are stronger than the 10 clones at the first level. The third and fourth levels can create 90 more clones, a total of 100 clones. The fourth level clones are stronger than the third level. 10 of them are the clones that were formed in the first level. The strongest. 10 of them together can even resist the power of the original body. The fifth level, the sixth level, and then 900 clones, a total of 1000 clones. The seventh level and the eighth level can be transformed into 9000 clones, for a total of 10,000 clones. Among them, the clones that appear in the first level are the strongest, then those that appear in the third level, and then those that appear in the fifth level. In the ninth level, there are 100,000 clones, overwhelming the sky and the earth. At the 10th great achievement, there is no limit to the number of clones, up to 1 million. They can be spread all over the world, everywhere. This is the level that can truly compete with millions of heavenly soldiers and generals. One person is an army of gods. Wu Yu used to lead troops in wars, so after he got a little understanding of the magical power of this outlaw clone, he truly felt how terrifying it was. Great celestial magic, the way to become an immortal. The indestructible body, the method of forging the body. The earth evil transformation technique, the method of transformation, just the immobilization technique, and the violence technique, benefited Wu Yu endlessly. The magical power of this extra-legal clone is absolutely perfect. The more you practice it, it can only be described as terrifying. One person turned into an army of millions of gods, all under his control and command. Wu Yu thought for a moment, if it was truly successful, wouldn't it be able to compete with the entire Tiangong? That would be an exaggeration. However, the 10th level is still too far. Wu Yu is only at the first level now. It is useless to aim too far, so Wu Yu is still more concerned about the situation at the first level. 10 of my hair have turned golden. There are 10 golden hairs mixed in the long black hair, which is basically not easy to detect. Even if outsiders see it, they will not know that this is actually Wu Yu's magical power and Wu Yu's clone. On top of the golden elixir, the magical power brand was based on the golden elixir. It started to circulate, and a dense aura rose up, surrounding Wu Yu's head. Yu's magical powers. Wu Yu pulled out the 10 hairs and blew them gently. For a moment, the mysterious magical power was directly activated. The 10 hairs unexpectedly transformed into 10 identical Wu Yes, each one as naughty as a monkey. Winking at each other, jumping up and down, so lively. Be serious. As soon as Wu Yu thought this, the 10 clones immediately became serious and motionless, staring at each other. In fact, these 10 clones are Wu Yu's 10 hairs. They are part of his body, just like Wu Yu's arms. Therefore, they will move how Wu Yu commands them. However, they are different from other parts of his body. What's interesting is that they have a certain degree of independent thinking, just like the wisdom of psychic instruments. Under normal circumstances, Wu Yu does not need to devote a lot of attention to controlling the movements of each clone. This principle is somewhat similar to the 9 heads of Zhuiying. Zhuiying is a magical demon. One of his 9 heads is the main one, responsible for controlling the body and other heads. However, any one of his heads can be regarded as the mastermind and can be switched at will, so even if he has 8 heads cut off, he will not die, just like having his arm broken. This clone is equivalent to 10 hairs of a slightly intelligent Wu Yu. Under the mysterious power of heaven, he transformed into Wu Yu's clone. As for their abilities, it was undoubtedly a surprise to Wu Yu. To put it simply, they are largely Wu Yu himself, so they can perform any of Wu Yu's Taoist techniques and possess all of Wu Yu's understanding of combat. Only magical techniques such as body-holding techniques and violent techniques cannot be used by clones. Come out. As long as they are equipped with swords, even the Void Super Divine Sword will be no problem. But in fact, they do not use Wu Yu's elixir. In this regard, they are independent individuals. Each hair is actually equivalent to a real body. The body has various acupoints and even a sea of qi. Acupoints, for example, these 10 clones in front of me all have their own golden elixir. This is the most amazing thing.